Before we go into that, I guess the big question here, we're gonna break up some fights or start some fights, I should say.
Mm.
Nintendo, and then you got Sega. So that means
Mm.
Sonic or Mario.
Oh man, there. Is it bad to love them both equally? People get mad at me for loving things equally. I My big problem with Sega was the sound.
Really?
Yeah, the sound drove me crazy because everything is muffled, and I didn't really truly realize that until I played Street Fighter on Sega Genesis. Because I always had a Super Nintendo, so when I got Street Fighter 2, everything was fantastic. Uh, it looked really good too. The graphics seemed a little bit better, even though they were both supposed to be 16-bit processors. And for some reason, like the majority of the specifics of the differences in the hardware between the two systems eludes me a little bit because I'm old and my brain is broken. But with like, I really love Mario for a bunch of reasons. Also, especially because if I shave the rest of my beard, I grow an amazing Mario mustache. And I'm fat. I'm totally gonna cosplay as Mario one day, or I'll just keep the beard. I'll cosplay as disheveled Mario and carry around like a whiskey bottle with me, and like I don't know, a Yoshi on a leash that's obviously dead and stuffed, but I can't let go of the past. But or okay, I'm getting carried away. If I'd have to choose, I'd probably say Mario because I played a whole lot more Nintendo. But I do really love Sonic the Hedgehog, except the new bullshit that they came out with. What is that, Sonic Boom? That was a fucking travesty. They need to stop that.
Yeah, a lot of people weren't a big fan. People
But like
want.
my big problem with the sound with Sega Genesis is it like you go from hearing like Hadouken to hearing like Hadouken. Like it's all muffled and shitty. Everything was like that. It was all I don't know, it really pissed me off.
People are probably gonna go back now, and the people that have a Sonic or a Sega are just gonna be like, "Oh yeah, we'll find out. We'll see about this," and then go back and they'll be
They're
like,
gonna
"What
play it and they'll
the
see.
hell?"
Hadouken, Shoryuken. That's how everything sounds. It's all square waves. I don't know what's happening.
You do that very well, by the way. Can you do that one more time? Just
Hadouken, Shoryuken.
That's really good. Wow, that's very good, very good.
Fun. It's fun to do.
So jumping from Nintendo to Super Nintendo now, why was that such a mind-boggling experience, I guess, where you really were like, whoa, this is new graphics, new sound, just mind-blowing experience.
Going to the 16-bit was really just a huge thing. Like there was so much more that they could do graphically, especially and one of the things that cracked me up, I was like a little tired of it, but I also think it's funny and it's nostalgia is like the way they had that zoom in feature where they could like zoom in anything. So like in ActRaiser, you'd be above a map and then they would do a thing where you would like zoom into the map and it's like, oh, or Bowser would be coming in from like way off, he would fly away and then he would slowly fly in and like smash you. Oh, Super Nintendo, not Super Nintendo. Oh my God, Super Metroid had the big thing where in the beginning you fight Ridley, and then when Ridley's done, he flies off, and then he just zooms in from the back. So they have that big zoom in feature, and it makes it look super ridiculous and pixely, but that added like a level of depth that we absolutely never had in any previous console. But things were a whole lot more rounder. There was a lot more pixels for them to work with in order to like do really good shading and make things, I don't know, just look fantastic. The speed was really good. The sound was superb. Like the way that they were able to code in sound in the hardware was like such a huge update because it sounded a little bit more like real music instead of like your flat out 8-bit hardware music,
Hmm.
which is amazing. And I'm a giant fan of chiptune, but when it started to sound more real, it was mind blowing. Once again, Street Fighter was another thing that actually made me kind of realize that because the music in Street Fighter on Super Nintendo, as a kid, I was like, it sounds like real music because apparently chiptune wasn't supposed to be real music. Uh, but all around, there was just so many different things that made it really fantastic. Whereas towards Sega Genesis, once again, we're going back to that. All the music was like a weird garble type thing. I love it still, but in my mind, the sound of that didn't really leave that 8-bit era so much.
Hmm.
They had
I,
blast processing, but nothing else.
I find it funny here you're like, oh, real music, and now people listen to like soundtracks all the time, and like a lot of people just enjoy listening to the game music
No, it's
because.
totally true. When I was a kid, I didn't really think about liking most normal music. And we had a thing in school in class Jesus, I don't know how old I was. I was like 7 or 8. We had a thing in class where they were like, everybody come up and tell us your favorite kind of music or whatever. And people would go up and be like, hi, my name's Ryan and I like rock and roll. I'm talking like this super deep voice for like a 7-year-old kid. And I like rock and roll, you know. My name's Kathy and I like pop. And I was like, hi, my name's Freddie and I like Nintendo. And that was it, you know, because I just liked Nintendo music was the only thing in my head. Those were the sounds that I loved the most, and I think that a large amount of that community, the chiptune community, is a bunch of us kids that grew up on Nintendo stuff, and that you know you get a certain like obsessive passion for it, and then you come together and you make a thing. I love chiptune.
I I honestly like video game music is I think it should be it's probably its own genre now. If not, it will be in the
Pretty
future.
much. Well, I mean, chiptune, flat out.
Yeah.
Chiptune is a genre, and if you go back, oh, I don't remember what it's called. I would have to look it up later. I think it was like digging in the cart or something like that. There was a documentary having to do with like the evolution of music in video games. They didn't just like make music on a synthesizer and then like put it in there. Music really way back in those days was actually flat out hard coded music.
Hmm.
You know, it was code. So that was kind of a big deal. Now everybody can just actually like play a synthesizer and good.
Yeah, that big changes there when it comes to sound. I'm sure somebody down in the comments. There you go. Another challenge for you guys. Find the movie and or video that he is talking about.
And it's something in the carts, digging in the carts, something like that. I can't remember, but it's pretty awesome.
So moving forward, did you enjoy Mario? Do you like have a favorite Mario game that you like to play since you're a little bit more of a Mario fan, but you enjoyed both? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did like Mario a lot. Super Mario 3 holds a very special place in my heart. Ah, man, I like them all. I have that problem with stuff sometimes. I mean, you have regular Mario because it like introduced you to it.
mhm.
You know, it was a new thing, that type of platforming genre with a fat Italian guy that eats mushrooms. This is racist and messed up for us to be okay with that as kids. But so then, I mean, yeah, I'm the first guy that's ever made that joke, right, everybody? But uh, so, but then Mario 2, they took Doki Doki Panic and skinned it over with Mario people, but it was still just an amazing game. It was like wacky. It was completely out there. There was a lot of really interesting stuff in there. But Mario 3, you got that feeling where it was back to the basics, and there was all sorts of really amazing like mechanics that were introduced, and all the suits and the flying and all that. So Mario 3 is really high up there for me. But when I got my Super Nintendo, my you know that whole thing with my family is impoverished or whatever. Um, we couldn't we could barely really afford to get games in general when I was a kid. I got maybe 2 games a year, like one for my birthday, one for Christmas, if I was lucky. The one Christmas I got Bionic Commando, Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and Mega Man 3 because apparently there was a sale, and that was like the greatest day of my life. But when we got the Super Nintendo, you know that set my mom back a bit. You know that set my parents back a bit. So we couldn't buy any other games, and there wasn't really a thing where you could rent games yet. That didn't really exist.
Hmm.
It was still only for videos. Oh no, it did exist. Maybe I was just too. All I know is that I had Super Mario World because it came with the system, and that was all we could afford for like the entire year. I'm really good at Super Mario World now because that's all I had. So I played the dickens out of it. I can 96 star the hell out. I even go back and like while I'm playing, I have flashbacks about like whatever's happened. I haven't played it in a few years, but when I played it, I was like, I'll be going through a level and I'll be like, "There's a secret over here!" Like everything just kind of triggers back into my brain. It's tattooed into my memory.
Uh,
But yeah, Super Mario World, I would say maybe second favorite, but Mario 3 is probably on top.
have you ever thought about doing like a quick run, a fast run
Speed
of it?
runs?
Yeah.
I kind of started to do that when I was playing it that little while back. Me and one of the guys that I was on a team with at the time, Schmacky, he loved it too, and he's pretty good at it as well. He's a Nintendo maniac of sorts, and we were like, well, let's try and do some races. Let's do some speed runs. And my record's like around 15 minutes, give or take.
Hit.
Yeah, just that's like any percent. That's just use whatever warps you can do, any glitches, you know, whatever. So yeah, I can beat the game in about 15 minutes. Uh, what was the other? Oh, and I felt special though because other people were coming in that were like really into speed runs and they were trying to like tell me the stuff I was doing wrong, but they were like, for somebody who hasn't played this game in like 10 years or whatever, like you're doing good. 15 minutes is good. And I was like, I'll take it. Just take the compliment. Just take.
Take the
Yeah.
compliment. That's all you got to do there.
Yes.
So moving forward, now we're getting into the other consoles here. Before we dabble into PlayStation, Xbox, did you get a Nintendo 64?
Eventually, I got a Nintendo 64. I think after I got the PlayStation, wasn't really a giant fan of it.
Wasn't a big fan.
Like, nobody hurt me. The I love it, but I don't love it. I feel like it just didn't really have a lot of really good games. It was revolutionary for sure, but it was extremely polygon-esque, which also is fine. The Mario game they had for it, it was a little awkward to start getting used to, like for me to have to rewire my brain in order to use like the analog stick, and that controller was out of control. I love the controller, but I also hate the controller because it's
It's weird.
just was weird. Yeah, it was not exactly bad, but it's weird. So I really enjoyed the Mario game on there, and I can't really, to be honest, remember what other games. Oh, GoldenEye, of course.
Yeah,
I
the
love
classic.
GoldenEye. I loved all the games that were like GoldenEye later on too. They made that South Park one, and they had Turok. Turok was really cool with like that cranial thing that you would always hit your friends with, and they would get mad at you because you knew where it spawned and all that stuff. Those games were really great, but I just feel like it didn't really have enough for me to really be interested in. They were all just kind of like, I don't know, crappy games.
Uh,
Didn't require enough skill, or were just way too glitchy. But nowadays, looking at those glitches is hilarious. It's a lot of fun. But at the time, I was like, these games are not high enough quality for me. I, I have no idea what I was really thinking. But yeah,
no, I think what it came down to, I remember going to GameStop with the N64, and we were looking at the game list, and for some odd reason, I got an N64 like you later,
Mm.
because I got a PlayStation first also. So, um, and we looked at the game list, and we were just like, what the fuck? Like,
Mr. Glover, what the
yeah.
fuck is this? Who gives a
Well,
shit? You know?
it wasn't even that. It was just like some random games because there's always like those random titles that you're gonna have on
Yeah,
those systems. But it was
Rocket
just
Happy Man.
it was just
I don't.
not a big selection at all
But
overall.
then a link or no, Ocarina of Time came out,
Hmm.
and that shit was a game changer.
What
Like
that was the game changer.
it's a great game. The Zelda games on there were absolute gold. I still have my old gold cartridge of the first Zelda in there, which the Ocarina of Time when that came out, they had gold cartridges for that, and those were limited.
Hmm.
I still have mine of that, and I think I also still have my Majora's Mask. I had the collectors of that too, which had it was they were all gold. The collector's edition had like a 3D looking like plastic thing. You know, it's one of those things where like when you
Oh
tilt
yeah, you
it, the
move it.
picture
Yeah.
moves. Yeah, yeah. I had those. Those were probably really the reason. Those were system sellers, flat out.
Hmm.
The Zelda games, in my opinion. My favorite though is still A Link to the Past, but when Ocarina of Time came out, I couldn't get myself away from that system at
Uh,
all. It's amazing.
uh, Man, on a side note, if there's any video game like fanatics that are planning to rob houses, you're just like, I got this, and they're like, all right. He,
Great. Bring that to the forefront. Yeah. It'll get me.
uh,
I'll just videotape it where everything is so you guys can make a plan. We'll be good.
oh no.
No, I do. I got a Sega and I have a Sega CD and I have a lot of and I keep on collecting some more other ones too. I recently just got Kingsfield down here under my 8-bit Zelda thing, but Kingsfield for the PlayStation I never actually got to finish, so I actually just picked up Kingsfield as well.
Oh man.
I just got that recently, but I just got Shining Force CD. I have Vi. I have Lunar 2, the original Sega CD versions of it. Yeah, no, I got all sorts of weird junk, a lot of old stuff.
No, but in all seriousness, that would be a video gamer's dream, I think, just to see all that nostalgia and just having the
Some of
original
it.
content,
Well, it's
honestly.
an old person video gamer's dream, or any young person that has like an affinity for that. That's obsessed with retro games.
That is true. That is true. Now going into the PlayStation and Xbox era, kind of, we're gonna jump a little bit ahead of the gun there because I know PlayStation came out before Xbox. Um, let's just get it out of the way now. Are you a Sony fan? Or are you an Xbox fan? Microsoft fan?
I like them both, but I do gear towards Sony more, especially right now. They really screwed the pooch when it came to the Xbone, in my opinion. IMO.
I mean,
Um,
Xbox is the reason PlayStation 4 now you have to pay for a lot of the crapola. I think you have to pay online for?
Kind of, yeah. If you want to do some online stuff, only if on PlayStation 4 though, specifically.
Yeah.
Nothing on PlayStation 3, but not too many people are playing PlayStation 3 anymore. Even though it still has a great library of games. Like a lot of people keep on being like, "Well, I got a PlayStation 4, so I'm just gonna sell my PlayStation 3," and I'm like, "Why?" There's so much stuff on there. And especially if you bought a bunch of stuff digitally, then you know, just why? I can't. I just can't. I can't.
Yeah,
But when first PlayStation, I do gear more towards Sony. Xbox 360 though was really amazing. Like they did good with
yeah.
Xbox 360. They pretty much beat out Nintendo. Oh my God, they pretty much beat out PlayStation during that era. But mostly, I would say I'm a Sony fan. Well, yeah. Getting back to that question, I don't have ADD. What?
No,
Come
you're
on.
good. You're good. You're mostly a Sony fan, so all the Xbox fans out there, just start the comments now. What the hell is your problem?
Go ahead.
What?
Yeah, you can go ahead and drop me some facts. Drop me some facts. I've never heard them before. I've never gotten into this argument either about which one's better. I've never done that. Never
Uh,
done that.
we always just like to ruffle their feathers here, just to keep them on the edge of their seat there. But going into the PlayStation now, the PlayStation's out. Was it weird using a disc? Like that was the first thing that I can think of. Like you're going from cartridges to other things, and you're just like this disc.
Not for me actually, because I had already I had grown with that part of the evolution as well. Because I had the Sega and a Sega CD,
Mhm.
and then at some point even before then they came out with a device called the 3DO, which was a disc version, something that was better than the Sega CD. It had more memory and stuff like that, but it was ungodly overpriced. But I had already had lots of experience using CDs for video games as well. I was just waiting for them to come out with something that would be better, like they were on their way. A lot of times when CDs first came out, one of the biggest differences when playing CD games became a thing was the music. Since it was actually on a compact disc, they could use flat out music. There was nothing really recorded or anything like that. They would actually have all the music tracks on there. Like track one would be all the data, so if you played it in a regular stereo, you would like blow your ears out and destroy your speakers because it would just be this garbled data. That even is still on the PlayStation disc. But then they would just have the music tracks like on the rest of the CD, so you could have whatever music you wanted. That was a little jarring, but it was also like, wow, this is the future. It's real now. Um, but there wasn't a lot of data, and the hardware also kind of couldn't keep up as well. So one of the things that they really started to do, that's when like the advent of movie like video games came into play.
Hmm.
They were similar to kind of like point and click games, but one of them I remember specifically was Psychic Detective, and I played that first in the 3DO. And my sister, who generally doesn't play games, really got into it as well because it's like it plays similar to Until Dawn. Just they used real actors and did scenes of them in situations, and then you get a choose your own adventure type thing. That was used in a lot more of games on CDs for quite a long time to try and like utilize what was available for those systems. Like try and use everything that they could. But the majority of the rest of this stuff, like Soul Feast, for instance, is a side-scrolling shooter that was on cartridge on Sega before it was on Sega CD, but they put it on Sega CD, but it was literally the same game. They didn't really add too much extra, but it could have real music in it. So the music was like way different. It wasn't like any chiptune and stuff like that. So that wasn't jarring for me at all. It felt natural for the most part. The thing that was jarring was the controller. I had to get used
The different
to.
controller again, yeah.
I mean, it's just like the feel of it. Like I was used to where the buttons kind of needed to be because Super Nintendo already had that layout,
Hmm.
so that was nice and natural. But just the shape of the controller was kind of weird for me to hold for a period of time.
I didn't even think about the controller. Like you mentioned that earlier with the N64 because that was a whole different ball game when it came to a controller. But I didn't even think about that with the PlayStation from the Nintendo to the
Yeah,
PlayStation would have been.
because the first controllers for PlayStation weren't analog, so they didn't even have those big stick things in the bottom. They were like batarangs.
Yep.
We would kind of make fun of it like that. So it got a little more awkward when they added the sticks because where they put the sticks just felt kind of weird. I remember being like, "The hell is this shit?" Why does it gotta vibrate?
I
But then I was like, oh, the rumble pack. Okay, I get you. I get you.
gives you a little bit more into the game there. Get you a little bit more.
Ooh,
But
the shoulder buttons. That
oh,
was like the new thing. Shoulder buttons were added because that didn't really exist on anything else except for Nintendo 64. Four shoulder buttons was like an interesting thing to try and handle, especially when you didn't have analog and you had games that were in a 3D environment where you had to look up and down and left and right, like Armored
hmm
Core, which
hmm
is one of my favorite game series like of all time. But in Armored Core, you had to be a Jedi to play that game, and you'd had to have a brain that you could rewire in order to handle it because the two shoulder buttons would let you strafe left and right, but then the back, L2 and R2 would make you look up and down. So you had to be moving with the D-pad forward and right while strafing, while
holy
jumping,
shit.
while trying to keep somebody inside of a box reticule. Shit, I don't know how to say that.
A
You have to keep people in the box.
the rectangle,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Or
rectangular.
in a square or something like that, or because that's the only way you can hit them. Depending on what weapon you're using, it might be smaller, might be bigger. So you had to be dodging somebody while keeping him in the box, managing your up and down with L2 and R2 in a very weird way. It was difficult,
I
but I
could see
got
it.
good at it, and it made me feel like a Jedi.
That's how you get your Jedi powers, right? Dude,
Hmm.
see? That's where it all starts, guys.
You
Video
get force
games.
sensitive by playing Armored Core.
I tell people that all the time when they're like, "Oh, that was a nice catch." I'm like, "It's all the video game."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
And
that's it. So you do that too, then, right? People
yeah,
throw things at you, and you won't even be looking. You'll just kind of see it coming at you, and you'll be like, bah, just like grab it real quick, and they're like, oh my God, what are you, a ninja? And I was like, you can't do that.
yeah, it's
I had a
quick
I had a
reflex.
girlfriend that got used to that. Like she loved throwing stuff at me because I would catch them fast like that, and she got used to just handing people stuff that way. And so once her mother was like, "Hey, can you hand me that CD?" and she just chucked this CD case at her mom and nailed her mom. Her mom was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And she's like, "I'm so sorry. I'm used to throwing them at. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Yeah, yeah. Playing video
you
games
just,
does increase your it does increase your hand-eye coordination and your
I,
reflexes because you're only training that.
I just, I could just
Apparently, she
see.
nailed her pretty hard too. Like,
Oh
mm,
man, just just nailing herself. I could just see just the facial reaction afterwards too, just being like, "What the fuck did you just do?"
yeah, absolutely. She got a
Oh,
look at the face like, what the fuck is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? What did you do? Yeah.
oh man. But back on track. That was great. That was a good laugh. Needed that there. Um, to get back on track though, for PlayStation, did you have a specific series that you enjoyed playing? Is there like because that's where I think I want to say RPGs kind of came into play. It was starting to get more popular. Maybe not for you. Maybe for
No, not for me. I
did.
mean, it did, and it didn't. One of my series was Resident Evil, actually. Because the big thing about PlayStation is it was a revolution in gaming having to do with censorship, which actually Sega CD covered a little bit of that as well. Sega CD is what brought in like the worry of it, the taboo. They came out with Night Trap, which featured a scene of girls dancing around all scantily clad, wearing like lingerie at a slumber party type thing. And it was like real actors at the time. So then everybody started freaking out. Like the media started doing stuff. It actually got not recalled. It was canceled in the U.S. or some shit. I don't remember exactly what went down with it, but there was a situation that had happened where Night Trap stopped being in production. They didn't want to sell it anymore. You can still find them. Man, I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna buy Night Trap. Thanks, man. But and I'm gonna stream it. And it's gonna be great. But yeah, stuff like that was happening. So when PlayStation came out, it was starting to become an era in which video games were made for adults instead of children because growing up it was always all these little cartoony things, or there really wasn't too much to it. I mean, aside from that weird Atari game, there's been Atari games that were made by adults for adults, and they're disturbing. And I'm not even going to go into it. If any of you want to learn, like in a little history lesson about something like a disturbing Atari game, some of you probably already know what I'm about to bring up. It's called Custer's Revenge. Um, yeah. Anyway, moving on. Um, but yeah, it started to become more of a mature thing. The majority of us that had been playing video games for a long time either started making video games, or we're starting to get to an age to where we want more out of our video games,
Mhm.
and that includes like all sorts of action type stuff. And The first game I played was, oh goodness, I can't remember the name of it. Hawk. Something Hawk. Oh no,
Hawk,
this is gonna bother me.
Hawkeye,
Warhawk.
Warhawk. There you go. See,
Warhawk. The first game I played was Warhawk, and I enjoyed it. Is flying a flyy thing and shooting stuff. But Resident Evil was the second one, and when I saw all the stuff they had on there, like all the blood and the cool cutscene things, and you can like stomp on zombies' heads, that was just mind blowing that they were making video games that were like this, that were more mature. So the Resident Evil series is one of the biggest things that I was a huge fan of. I had been a fan of RPGs for a long time because of they had Final Fantasy on Nintendo,
that's
uh,
true.
and then Super Nintendo, of course. Then they came out with Final Fantasy 2, which was Final Fantasy 4. And then they came out with Final Fantasy 3, which was 6, and all that other stuff. But Final Fantasy 6 is actually my favorite video game of all time, still to this day. But yeah, so I was very excited for Final Fantasy 7, which then there was another game before that to get my RPG fix. Oh goodness, Wild Arms. It was called Wild Arms. That game came out a little ways before the release of Final Fantasy VII was supposed to happen, so that's how we got our Final Fantasy fix for a while, our RPG fix. But yeah, Resident Evil I'd say is probably one of the biggest things on there. Um, yeah, no, definitely, especially Resident Evil 2. So okay, I'm gonna tell a story. I hope we have time for it. Um, Capcom put out a God, I wish streaming existed in this day because I have no proof for you guys. Capcom put out an article in a gaming magazine. I don't remember what it was. It might have been Game Informer. Um, but they put out an official code thing because they would have like a code section in there to where they would show cheats or stuff like that you can unlock.
Yeah.
And they put in an official thing. It was from Capcom. Dropped this code into the thing, saying that if you could beat the game Resident Evil 2 6 times using only a handgun and a knife and never healing once, never using a healing item, then you beat it 6 times, and then at the end you type in the word Akuma into this computer you need to like unlock to get out. It would unlock Akuma as a playable character from Street Fighter, and they had pictures too. They made good pictures, and they put pictures on there of Akuma Hadoking, like shooting fireballs. Hadoking, is it a verb now? Shooting fireballs at like zombies and stuff. And I was like, I need this. I'm gonna do this. It was Resident Evil 2 was something that I played like I all the time, forever. People would invite me to parties to play Resident Evil 2 for them in its entirety, just so that they could watch it like a movie, stuff like that. I was a Resident Evil 2 god. So I did this. I actually beat it 6 times using only the handgun and the knife. Though there's one part where you have to shoot Tyrant with a rocket launcher. So that kind of negates it. But I was like, oh, they probably figured that into the code. No big deal. But with a handgun and a knife, never healing once, 6 times, and it didn't work. And I was like, oh, maybe they mean 6 entire times because there's 2 discs. And so you play through both discs, and that's like one entire game's playthrough. So then I did it another 6 times.
Holy
And
cow.
it still didn't work. And I was like, I did everything right. Like I was freaking out. And my friend that was there, my friend Bill was there, and I was like, wait a minute, grab me that magazine. And he gave it to me, and the date was April. It was an April magazine, Tony. It was April. It was an April issue. It was bullshit, Tony. It was all a fucking lie. Capcom trolled me. But I have no proof of this for anybody. I only have my own personal suffering and the 2 people that were there when I did it. But other than that, yeah, that's my Resident Evil story. So yeah, I love Resident Evil. Capcom, love you guys so much.
So it was a troll. It was never a thing. You could never do
No,
it.
it was an April 1st thing. There's a website that has like what was it? It was like one of those YTMD things or whatever that actually like plays a song in the background and shows that. It's like a funny troll thing. My friend found it the last time I told this story. One of the people that was there when I was doing it, and he sends it to me every once in a while, and I feel pain. I just feel pain. I feel the
Oh
death
my
inside.
god.
I feel the part of me that I lost
See,
deep inside.
those were the days when we were gullible for the April Fool stuff, you know?
We didn't have the internet. We couldn't just. Well, I didn't have the internet because I was poor, but the internet wasn't really a thing. Google didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
I couldn't just type up a thing and look for answers or see what everybody else fucking said. I had a magazine. That was it.
Oh man, I feel so
It was
that
horrible.
that is terrible, but still good at the same time. Still good.
Yeah, it's a story, that's for sure.
Oh
I'll
man.
forget. Never forgetting.
Um,